All righty. All right, guys. For the people, carries Mr. Blazier. Matt for the defense, Mr. Lambert. A little 160 OJ for voice. Mr. Blazier's in direct examination. So eights.
Okay.
Okay, ready, begin. Ms. Mazzola, if you initialed the bindles that you processed on the morning of the 14th and later on those bindles did not have your initials on them, that would indicate that they weren't the same bindles, correct?
Objection. Assumes facts not in evidence argumentative.
Sustained. You can argue that.
Now, you are sure you made sure that those swatches were all dry at the time that you put them in the bindles on the morning of the 14th, correct?
The ones that I had control over, yes.
And you learned later that at least one of the bindles, when it was opened later on, showed evidence of a wet transfer on the paper itself.
Objection calls for hearsay, Your Honor.
Are you aware of that?
Excuse me. Sustained.
Did you ever look at these bindles after they were prepared on the morning of the 15th?
No, I did not.
So you don't have any independent knowledge that the bindles that were later examined were the same ones that you guys fixed on the morning of the 14th.
Objection argumentative.
Prepared.
Assumes facts not in evidence.
You can rephrase that maybe.
You have no personal knowledge that
Don't leave us in suspense like this.
okay, you have no personal knowledge that the bindles that you and Dennis Fung prepared on the morning of the 14th were the same ones that were later examined by Colin Yamauchi?
Same objection, still argumentative.
Overruled.
No, I do not.
Now, getting back to Mr. Simpson's reference blood, you were ordered at some point to change your paperwork to show that Mr. Simpson's reference blood should be item 17 rather than 18. Isn't that correct?
Mr. Fung told me the tennis shoes had been brought in by Detective Lang on the 14th and that they should be given the number later down the blood vial, what he received on the day before, reset at 16.
Is the answer to my question yes? At some point you were directed to change the number for Mr. Simpson's reference blood from 18 to 17.
Correct.
And that was to eliminate the appearance that the blood had been kept overnight by Detective Van Adder. Isn't that correct?
Objection argumentative, Your Honor.
Overruled.
The tennis shoes were brought in after the blood, therefore they should have gotten a later number.
Of all the items that you collected on the 13th and 14th, was there any other item that you were directed to change the number on other than Mr. Simpson's reference blood?
No.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Cross-examine.
Ms. Mazzola, you were asked a number of questions by Mr. Blazier about your testimony in August 1994. Do you remember that?
Yes.
That testimony wasn't during the actual criminal trial, was it?
No, it was not.
Was that during some preliminary hearing of some sort?
Yes.
And on that occasion, had you had an opportunity to prepare at all for that testimony?
No.
Had you had an opportunity to review your notes?
No.
Did you even have your notes with you?
No.
So you testified on that occasion without any preparation and without any notes, is that right?
I did not have any personal notes. I borrowed Mr. Matheson's.
He didn't have all the same things you have in your notes, did he?
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
Did he have all the same things in his notes that you had in your notes?
No.
Objection.
Excuse me. There's an objection. Foundation. Sustained. Lay a foundation.
Did you look at Mr. Matheson's notes a little bit on the stand that day?
On the stand, yes.
Were his notes identical to your notes?
He was lacking one sketch.
And were you able, during your testimony, to completely review his set of notes to refresh your recollection about the events during the evidence collection?
Not while I was testifying, no.
Did you later discover that you had made some mistakes during your testimony because of your lack of preparation?
Objection, leading.
Overruled.
Yes.
Now, in regard to the collection of the evidence at Rockingham, Mr. Blazier asked some questions about whether Mr. Fung was supervising you during every swatching of every piece of evidence that you swatched. He was present on the premises throughout the time you were working, wasn't he?
Yes, he was present.
And was there also another supervisor from SID present?
Toward the end, yes.
That was who?
Mr. Steve Johnson,
And what's his position at SID?
Assistant Laboratory Director.
And did he also supervise you some of the work that you were doing or observed?
He watched me do one or two towards the end, yes.
And the actual swatching method that you used, using the little cotton swatches and distilled water and clean tweezers and so on, is that the same method that you're still using today?
Yes.
Have you changed it at all in any way since the time you collected the evidence at Bundy and Rockingham?
No.
You're now what level criminalist?
Criminalist 2.
And how many crime scenes have you processed since Bundy and Rockingham?
Objection, irrelevant.
Sustained.
The technique, the swatching technique that you used in that case, were you careful throughout the time that you did it?
Yes.
Same level of care that you've used on crime scenes since then?
Yes.
The questions were asked of you about whether you could specifically remember precisely when you changed your gloves when you were processing the Bundy crime scene. Is it your recollection that you changed your gloves more than one time during that crime scene processing?
I know it was more than one time, but I can't give you a specific number.
Do you have a custom or habit of changing gloves often during crime scene processing?
Objection, leading, irrelevant.
Overruled. You asked on direct exam.
You change your gloves so often in the lab, especially where I work in. We are in gloves almost the entire day. To us, changing gloves is the same as blinking. We do it. We don't think about doing it. We don't remember how many times we do it.
And it was that your custom when you were doing, at the time you were doing the blood collection in this case?
Yes.
Now, in regard to the blood in the Bronco, there was some question about the blood collection on June 14. Who actually did the swatching on that occasion?
Mr. Fung.
So you were just assisting Mr. Fung?
Yes.
And was Mr. Fung able to literally swatch up all of the blood that was visible?
No, not all of the blood.
So there was some blood left over after the swatching was done?
Yes.
You were also asked some questions about this cabinet in the evidence processing room that was not locked. The room itself, is it locked or unlocked?
It is locked.
And who has access to it?
After hours, the criminalist 2s and above only have access.
And other than criminalists within the scientific investigation division, can any other person get inside that evidence processing room?
No.
Can police officers go in there?
No.
So the blood was left overnight in this locked room that only SID personnel, criminalists 2 or above, would have access to?
Correct.
Objection, leading.
Overruled.
Finally, you were asked some questions about whether you took any photographs of the swatches during the time you were processing them. Have you ever on any of your cases taken photographs of any of the swatches?
No.
Objection, irrelevant.
Just a minute. Sustained.
Have you ever taken a photograph of a swatch during the evidence collection process?
Objection, irrelevant.
That's overruled.
No, I have never.
Would the failure to take a photograph turn the swatch from one person's blood into another?
Objection, argumentative. I'll withdraw it.
Okay.
No, it would not.
Have you ever sketched, reset on 16 please, one of the swatches when you're in the process of doing this evidence collection?
No.
Would the failure to sketch one of the swatches turn the blood from one person's blood into another?
No.
And finally, this question about the bindles. Whether the swatches were dry or not, did you do any tests to determine if swatches were dry before you put them into the bindles?
No.
Did you see Mr. Fung do any tests?
No.
You just looked at them. If they looked dry, you put them in the bindles.
Objection, leading.
Overruled.
Correct.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect.
Ms. Mazzola, apparently you didn't blink between the knit cap and the glove, did you?
No, I did not.
Now, is it your testimony that since your work in the criminal case, you still don't sketch swatches?
That is correct.
You haven't changed your technique at all.
Not in the collection, no.
And isn't one of the reasons you take pictures and draw sketches so you can demonstrate later that the swatches haven't been tampered with?
Objection assumes facts not in evidence.
Sustained.
Says she didn't do it.
Jury to disregard that question. It's argumentative.
Now, let me see if I understand your testimony in August, 2 months after you did the work in this case. You're saying that you've made mistakes because you weren't prepared.
I did not write my memory at the time, yes.
All right. Now, you said that you had Greg Matheson's notes, right?
Correct.
And you looked at them carefully enough to know that they were the same as yours, except one sketch was missing, correct?
There were photocopies of the original, except the sketch was on the back of one of the pages, and he did not have that.
So you had everything in front of you except one sketch, correct?
Correct.
And you knew that from looking at the notes that you had everything there except one sketch, didn't you?
As I was being asked the questions and I was trying to answer them, yes.
What mistakes did you make in August?
I didn't have a chance to look at the crime scene photos, sit down, go through the notes beforehand to refresh my memory. I was trying to do that as I was being asked questions by the defense.
Move to strike, non-responsive.
Denied.
What mistakes did you make in August?
Just whether or not where Mr. Fung was at certain times, or if he picked up one thing and I picked up another.
Any other mistakes?
I do not know.
So your testimony that you signed, that you initialed the bindles, that was correct, wasn't it?
No, it is not.
Oh, it's not correct. When did you learn that you didn't initial the bindles?
After I saw photos and I was told by serology that the bindles did not have my initials or Mr. Fung's.
So they weren't the same bindles, were they, that you initialed when you made them?
Objection argumentative misstates the evidence.
Sustained.
So your reason for thinking that your under oath testimony from August was a mistake is because the bindles that were later examined didn't have your initials on them. Is that what you're saying?
That was one of the things.
And now you know for sure that was a mistake because you saw the pictures that don't have your initials on them. Is that what you're saying?
The bindles that we prepared with the blood swatches did not have my initials. Initially, I thought that they did. They do not.
And that's all the information you have to conclude that you made a mistake when you testified under oath in August, correct?
Correct.
Now, when you testified in April that Mr. Fung and you collected all of the blood from the Bronco, had you had plenty of time to prepare your testimony at that time?
Yes.
You spent a lot of time with the prosecutors in preparing for your testimony in April of '95, did you not?
Actually, not a lot of time, no.
When you testified under oath that you collected the entire visible stain of every stain that you saw in the Bronco in April, that was the truth, wasn't it?
After you pick up a stain, there's going to be a little bit left from the water from the swatch. You will not pick up a stain so it is so clean you cannot tell if there was something there before.
Your testimony in April of '95 was the truth, wasn't it?
In some parts, I was not mistaken. In others, I was.
Now, okay, so you're saying now that your testimony in April of '95 was a mistake. The part about you collected everything from the Bronco, right?
We collected representative stains, samples from what we saw.
How did you find out that was a mistake?
Perhaps the mistake was saying the word all.
You thought that was a mistake because in August of '94, they found a lot more blood in the Bronco, didn't they?
Apparently, after they tore the seats out, yes.
That blood wasn't there when you processed that car on the 14th, was it?
Objection argumentative, Your Honor.
Overruled.
We did not tear the seats out of the Bronco. We collected the stains from what we saw.
The blood, you did not see any blood consistent with what was later found in August when you processed that car on the 14th of June,
Objection.
1994, did you?
Lack of foundation.
Sustained.
No further questions. Oops, wait a minute. Let me show you 1420, Ms. Mazzola. When you were done processing the Bronco on the 14th, and as you testified in April of 95, that blood was no longer there, was it?
Objection as to foundation of this photograph, Your Honor.
Well, let's look at what you see here, and that was not there after you finished with the Bronco on the 14th of June, was it?
I do not know.
Did you take any photos on the 14th?
Photos were taken, yes.